What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And this one, I'm break down what's going on with Tesla stock and give you guys my price picture for the share price moving forward. I'm also going to talk about what's going on with SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and many tickers very briefly. And break down what the news is saying about the markets and Tesla moving forward. Before breaking things down about all this information, before I get into any more details, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I am not a financial planner, so take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire Tesla community as a whole. And finally, don't forget about the Webull link. The offer ends very soon. If you deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. Anyways, now let's talk about Tesla, what's going on with the markets. Tesla was down 0.76% for the day on Friday, trying to hold up after we got that pop and drop into the open. This is a very similar trend that happened over the last couple of days. Now, I'm going to release another video and talk specifically about what I think is going to happen for the next month for Tesla. But for today and right now, I just want to talk about for tomorrow and just the really, really short term because there's a lot to discuss about this. Now, for Tesla, from a technical standpoint, okay, right now at the time I'm recording this, because we don't really have very strong signals right now, it looks more likely Tesla's going to downtrend. Why do I say that? Because look at the high Tesla made at 284, then it came down, then it made its new high at 283 point something. That's a lower high. Then it came down, then it went up again, got a rejection, a very, very nice rejection right over here on the 4-hour time frame, and it continued to drop. So that's another bearish looking signal, making lower highs. And it made lower lows, at least as of Thursday. Also, if you look at the daily candle, this is looking a little bit weaker as Tesla's continuing to try to hold above the 5 EMA. If it breaks below this, 270 could come to potentially even lower levels. And on the daily time frame, it is looking a little bit weaker, looking at the RSI and our MACD. Looking at the stochastic, it's showing the same thing right now. There's some weakness developing on it. We can quite clearly see it looking at the upper bands right over here. And Tesla's continuing to show signs that it just wants to cool off a little bit. I also want to add that on the daily chart, there's a bearish divergence right here on the RSI. That is another signal that Tesla could slow down soon. And on the 4-hour time frame, the same thing is developing, or at least the same thing developed right about here. So it developed right here, but it's not showing as much on the 4-hour. On, I think, the 1-hour, it's also showing that the last time I checked it. So yeah, so right here on the 1-hour, you could basically see that the RSI made basically a lower high compared to this high right here. And when the RSI does this, this basically suggests that there's this bearish divergence that played out right here, and we might see Tesla kind of cool off a little bit. It is showing some signs of weakness. The stochastic is showing that on the 1-hour time frame too, and it's once again looking like Tesla has an increased probability of slowing down very soon. So now to cool this off, let me get rid of the stochastic to make this look a little smaller and use the 5-minute time frame. What do I think is going to happen for tomorrow specifically? I think that Tesla's going to follow its trend, okay? What is the trend? It has a tendency of popping, then dropping into the open. So right here, let's go back a little. I'm going to use the 1-hour time frame and actually hide the drawings for just a few minutes just to show you what I'm talking about. Going right here, okay? Tesla basically opened up at about 284 not too long ago, right? It popped into the open and then it came right back down, then it traded sideways. Then Tesla popped, came down, and started popping after we had the FOMC minutes. After that, when the Fed was being hawkish and the jobs numbers came out strong, it came down, it popped, then dropped, popped a little bit more, then came right back down. Then finally on Friday, the same thing happened. We got a nice pop, a drop. It popped a little bit after we got some bullish news and came right back down. I think we're going to see a very similar trend where Tesla pops into the open, it drops later on, then it trades a little bit sideways. But as the days progress, I think there's an increased probability of some more downside from a technical standpoint right now at the time I'm recording this, because the 4 hours is looking more bearish on the MACD. All right, so that's just my broad view of Tesla for the short term. I think we could see some downside for this week. And then going forward, from a more specific standpoint, what levels would I be watching for? One thing worth noting is we had the news about Mercedes that came out, Mercedes joining in the Tesla supercharger network. That didn't really help Tesla pop that much. It only popped back up to 280, then it rejected off that. So it's looking a little bit weaker. Despite some bullish news coming out, it's still slowing down, and the market is playing a role. So is, many factors of manipulation. So I'm thinking Tesla might try to pop to about 278 or so, around there. If it gets above 278, maybe it goes to 280, but that's looking a little bit tricky. somewhere between 278 to 280 is where it's going to likely pop, then reject off that area probably. And if it rejects, we could see it come all the way back down to these lower levels, like around 275 or so. And I think it might try to bounce depending on what Bostic says. He was being a little bit more dovish as of recent, so he might do the same thing. We're likely going to get a very flat close until maybe a somewhat green one, but it's not going to be like a super strong close. I also think that later on, right, like it could start as soon as Monday, maybe not as soon as Monday, maybe the later days. Tesla will start cooling off even lower probably because, like I said before, the chart's looking weaker. So looking for a pop, a drop, and then maybe a very flat, somewhat green close as possible. Or it might just start cooling off even more going into like the later days or as soon as Monday at the end of the day, right? I'm not 100% sure about how it's going to close because of Bostic, but I think there's going to be downside coming anyways later on for Tesla over the very short term, over the next couple of trading days. Just looking at this trend, if you just look at it on the 5 minutes, looking weaker and weaker, we're likely going to see this thing break below and test 270 very, very soon. All right, so that's my broad view of Tesla. Okay, some potential downside could be coming. And the chart is suggesting that, so please be open minded. Anyways, now I want to talk about something else that's going on for the markets because we have lots of big things to be discussing. All right, so for tomorrow specifically, Tesla and the whole market is going to be dictated by the Fed speakers. We have a bunch of them this time around. They're back, unfortunately. At 10 o'clock a.m., we have Barr from the Fed speaking. Then at 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time, and by the way, I'm speaking Eastern Time. In Eastern Standard Time, we have Daly from the Fed speaking at 11 a.m. Mestre at 11 a.m. as well. And then we have the consumer inflationary expectations report, which tends to be kind of decent for the markets. It may not affect it that much, but this has been pretty decent so far because consumers are gaining confidence in the markets. Their sentiment is shifting and they're becoming more confident that inflation is going to cool off. So this might be kind of decent for the markets at 11 o'clock a.m. And then one of the biggest things is going to be Bostic speaking at about noon Eastern time. He's going to be speaking. So what is Bostic going to say? I don't know what he's going to say. That's the reason why I'm like not as confident about how Tesla will close for tomorrow. It's going to be determined by this. The last time he spoke, he pumped the markets. He said that the Fed is done. They're likely going to pause. But I don't know if he's going to say it again because the latest data that came out from the jobs numbers were a little bit hot in some sectors, like the private sector. So I'm not as sure about this, but my guess would be that he might pump the market a little bit, but it might not be that strong because of the weakness we're seeing in some sectors. So that's just my guess. It may not be that strong. And I still believe, nonetheless, Tesla will likely see downside, maybe cool off a bit based off the technicals for this week so far. Now, for Tuesday, we have Bullard speaking just as a reminder. And Tuesday is going to be a big day because it's the last day to sell options or exit positions. Because on Wednesday morning, we have CPI coming out, and that's going to be big for the Fed and the markets. So we have to watch that very carefully for Wednesday. But, anyways, that's what I'm seeing for Tesla for the time being. Now, those are the catalysts for the markets. For earnings, we have the WD-40 company reporting earnings after the market closes for Monday. I'm going to be watching that. It's going to be interesting. Tuesday does not have much going on. Same thing with Wednesday. Then for Thursday, we have Delta, we have PepsiCo, we have Progressive, and a couple of others reporting earnings. And for Friday, we have Citi, we have Wells Fargo, we have JP Morgan Chase, and just a couple of other ones. So the big banks are going to be coming out on Friday. And for Thursday, we have other big ones. And besides that, those are the only like really big days for earnings. There's been more talk coming out for Tesla news about how basically France is very interested in joining and incentivizing Tesla to make more investments, basically. I don't know about France because, like I said, Tesla's going to be looking for what's strategically advantageous, for them. And in doing so, this is going to help Tesla continue to grow and find what's going to make their growth more efficient in a way. So is Tesla going to like build their factory in the middle of nowhere? No, they're going to be looking for a really good place to exploit resources, basically. And they also want to look at labor costs and other factors like that. That's the way Tesla's looking from a business standpoint. And I don't know if France is one of the most optimal places. There could be better opportunities like around Spain for their battery production, but who knows? Maybe there's something better in France. They're very, very inclined to getting Tesla to open a gigafactory over there. And if it does happen, if this is announced, this would still be bullish news nonetheless, because Tesla would still be expanding to some degree. This also gives them more edge in like Europe and Western Europe. So it's a possibility. Another place that could be advantageous for them would be like India because of more affordable labor. Lots of engineers are over there as well. I'm just noting that that was making the news a couple of days ago too. So we'll see on that. Tesla's also offering to pay people between $18 and $48 an hour to drive its EVs this summer. But this is not exactly the truth. It has more to do with the tests because they're not just driving the EVs, they're testing the EVs with Tesla. Tesla's willing to do lots of these tests to test how their FSD beta is doing, how the autopilot is doing, the driver assist features. They're doing this and they're willing to pay individuals pretty decent money to just drive around and just to see what quality improvements could be made and things like that. So it's worth noting. I think this is very, very awesome for them. And as they continue to do this, this could be once again big for them to improve their products. And that's what's very good about this company, constantly improving their products. Now, one thing I consider that's pretty decent, but also like a little concerning in a way is because Tesla has another referral program that they just announced. Basically, if you refer a friend to buy a new Model 3 or Y using a preferred referral link, it could basically give them $500 off, that's the local currency equivalent of that much, on their purchase. They'll also receive 10,000 credits that could be redeemed for supercharging and other big benefits. Now, in my eyes, yes, it's awesome. Maybe this could help bring in more customers, help them sell a lot more. But the problem is, how many times are they going to be like cutting prices and offering discounts? There comes a time where you have to just be very careful with it. I know Tesla gave us strong deliveries, but what was the cost of that? There are so many price cuts. They keep on doing this. My question is, how are margins going to look this time around? This is going to have a massive effect on earnings and Tesla's price performance after that. And that's going to be very important. I will talk more about this in a later video in a couple of hours. But for now, I just wanted to note that there's also news coming out about the Cybertruck because Tesla has been testing it in New Zealand. And for now, it's looking very strong. They're working on the brakes and the tests for that. It looks very nice. I think that they're doing a very good job as they're drifting it and they're continuing to use it. I think this vehicle has a lot of potential to be used as a camper van, and I just think that the possibilities are endless with its current capabilities. I can't wait to see what it looks like when it's actually on the streets and how it looks when more people start using it and they start driving it in the snow and etc. That could be very useful, so we'll wait and see for it. Now, for Tesla, the price price ratio hit this high level. It is starting to slow down just a little bit. This is a sign of declining strength from Tesla. Is it that bad, though? It's not that bad so far, but just to be safe, it could get worse looking at how shorts have been piling into Tesla. Mizuho came out and they're saying to buy Tesla. So that's a decent piece of news that came out just 3 days ago. It's the last analyst we really got from Tesla. Morgan Stanley said that Tesla's going to perform equally with the markets, however, which is different from Mizuho. Despite that, actual earnings tend to be pretty decent for Tesla. And look at the hourly seasonality. Tesla tends to do well during the second and also during the fourth hour of the trading day. So watch it very carefully during that time frame. And don't forget, Tesla tends to be green on Mondays about 53% of the time, but it tends to slow down on Tuesdays about 51% of the time. So we'll have to wait and see on that. As far as the month of June goes, Tesla tends to be very strong in June, but then there's a big decline between June and July. We're in July, and we tend to see Tesla green only 42% of the time. So July could be giving us a slowdown, not just for Tesla, but for the markets in general. It's just worth noting. I also want to add that the short interest on Tesla declined just a little bit, but we're still seeing a lot of shorting compared to like these levels right here back in April. So there still are a lot of shorts on Tesla. They want to see this thing drop, and there is a chance that they may be knowing something or something like that. Anyways, as far as Tesla goes, like I said before, now when it comes to the technicals, we may see a pop near open, then a sell-off as the day goes on, and very sideways price action, then a potential drop depending on what Bostic says, or even a pop. I'm not too sure about Bostic, that part, but I do believe Tesla making a somewhat green close or very flat close for at least Monday, but then it may decline more as we approach like Tuesday and beyond because this trend is looking more bearish from a technical standpoint. And I do believe there's a chance Tesla's going to make an attempt to fill this gap. If it breaks below 270, that's going to be your signal. 270 is going to be a very important level. If it breaks below that, there's a good chance it's going to fill the majority of this gap, if not the entire gap. And that could bring Tesla all the way down to 265, if not as low as like 262. And if that's the case, I still think Tesla could bounce right before earnings and start popping a little bit. Then earnings will determine if Tesla continues to pop or not after July 19th. But for now, that's what I'm seeing for Tesla. I will talk more about this in another video. For SPY, I see the same thing going on. SPY is looking a little bit weaker, but it's not too horrible. It's holding above the 1 hour 200 EMA. That's going to be your signal of whether or not this pivots. However, looking at the current trend, this thing has been making lower highs, and lower highs over the last couple of days. The trend is looking a little bit weaker, but if we break below 438, that's going to be another signal of downside. The bank earnings and CPI for this week are going to be very important for it, but I think that as this thing tends to do in the morning, just like Tesla, we tend to pop a little bit in the morning, cool off a bit. We did it right over here and here and here. We didn't really do this on Thursday, but we did this on Friday. We kind of like popped and came back down. So I'm going to be watching for a potential rebound, a retest of like 440 or so, maybe a little bit higher. Then we might come and end up getting a rejection from there and come right back down to these levels. I'm going to be watching that very carefully. And if it breaks below 438, right? So above 438, the next important level is going to be right around 440 to 440.5. And if that breaks, like I said before, the next important resistance is going to be around 441.5, then 442. Those are all some important levels just to be taking notes of. And if it breaks below these levels, so I'm anticipating like a pop up in the morning, then a break down a little bit later. So a pop, then drop. And if it breaks below 438, you're going to be watching the 436s. And I think there's a good chance we may be testing them very soon as it's looking a little bit weaker. And then if that breaks, there's 435, 433, and then much lower levels after that into the very low 430s. I don't think SPY is going to like tank very hard. I think it's going to be very sideways for the majority of the week. I think we're going to pop, come right back down, trade kind of sideways, and we might close very flat, but there is a chance of some more weakness as the chart is starting to suggest that. For the QQQ, same thing with the QQQ. If you want to turn bullish on this thing, you need to see it hold above 370. If it does so, watch 372, then 372.5 to 372.8, which wouldn't complete, this giant inverse head and shoulders. But there's no guarantee it's going to do that. Now, if you're bearish, you're going to be watching 365 or even lower than that. But what I think is going to happen to the triple Q is a nice pop, right? A nice pop to retest like 368 or so. It could go a little bit higher, but it might reject again as it's stuck between the 50 and the 200. A break below the 200 at 365 is going to cause this thing to drop lower, and I think there's a good chance it's going to come back down to 364. Maybe pop up first to 368, slow down a bit. Maybe it holds up just for this week. Maybe it tries to hold. I mean, not this week. I mean, for like Monday. For Monday, it tries to hold up, so it pops, comes right back down, trades a little bit sideways. Then by Tuesday and beyond, it starts to slow down more. So now I'm going to be very quick with the rest of these. If you look at Aapl, it is showing a little bit of weakness. There's a possible head and shoulders now starting to form. Going to be looking for a pop on Aapl and a retest of like 192, and it might reject after this pop and start downtrending just a little bit more. So there's a possible head and shoulders developing on it. It's looking a little bit weaker in a way because it formed this divergence right about here on the 1 hour time frame. And we might see Aapl try to pop and then cool off back down to 190. If it breaks above 192.5, then it could pop a lot higher, but I don't really think that's going to happen. I think it's going to just retest 192 and reject. A break below 190 is going to come down to 189 and 188.5 and etc. For the Nvidia, this thing is trying to hold up. There is this inverse head and shoulders that is technically valid, but the problem with Nvidia is it is starting to trade sideways with all the news involving China. But what's good is Janet Yellen did say some very positive things about how the relationship is improving and this and that. So this might help Nvidia outperform the market and try to retest 433. If it breaks that, it could go all the way up to 440. So watch that resistance very carefully around 433. If it breaks down, watch 421 as support. If that fails, just watch 418 and beyond that. But I think it's going to likely outperform the market thanks to the news involving China from Janet Yellen. For Microsoft, if you want to be bullish, you need to see this thing break and hold above for $340. If it manages to do so, watch 343. If it fails to do so, watch 335 as support. If that fails, it's going to make its way down to 334.7, then potentially 332.6. I believe that Microsoft is looking very flat right now, just doing this whole back and forth thing. It's going to try to pop near open, come right back down, and we may slow down on this because it's showing a little bit more weakness than strength on the MACD. So we'll wait and see. Maybe it pops and comes right back down to these different levels. Maybe it retests like 340 then rejects. That's very possible for it as well. AMD may do well thanks to Janet Yellen saying some very bullish things about China. There's a possible inverse head and shoulders here. We got this imbalance up here around this like 116 area, and we could see this thing pop up one more time. So I'm going to be watching if this thing can break above 113.8. If it does so, watch 115 to potentially 118. If it breaks and fails to do so, watch 112 as support. If that fails, just watch 109. And if 109 fails, watch 107. I think this thing is going to pop near open, cool down just a little bit, and then just continue to hold up thanks to Janet Yellen. And it's going to outperform the market and get a green close somewhere around the 114s. For Netflix, if you're bullish on Netflix, you want to see this thing break up and break above 440. If it does so, watch this unfilled gap at around 445. If that breaks, watch 447 and 450. Now, there's this nice, like double bottom like formation that ended up forming, and Netflix is showing some strength. It's still holding up nicely. We're going to be watching this 440 area. There's a lot of chop around here. So if it manages to hold above it, it has potential to go all the way up to like 445. If it fails to do so, it's going to come down to 432. I think it's just going to trade sideways for the time being, and not a whole lot is going to go on with it just for tomorrow. So that's what I'm saying, just very sideways price action. There's not much else to say about Nvda and many of these others like Nasdaq and etc. The dollar is pretty flat. Coinbase is looking pretty decent. This thing may try to pump off the news from Janet Yellen. There's this bearish divergence though, so it's very mixed. Now, what I'm thinking is it may try to pop above 80 and try to go up to like 182.5, then cool off a bit and still close kind of green because it's showing some strength from a technical standpoint with very, very nice higher highs developing. So it's still pretty decent. I think we're going to see sideways price action, potentially a green close. If it broke below 77.73, we could see 75, but I don't really think it's going to do that. I'm leaning more towards it holding up. Now, for Baba, this is likely going to be bullish after some bullish news came out and the Janet Yellen news. We're likely going to see Alibaba try to pop all the way up to 95 very soon, or at least 94.88. That's my target. Looks more bullish than bearish. If it breaks down, watch 90, then 88, 86.68, 85, and 82.5 as support. I don't think it's going to happen that way. I think it's more likely going to pop to 94 plus. Google's pretty flat. There's not a whole lot going on with it. There's a possible head and shoulders if it does break below this like 119 support, watch 117. If it manages to break 121, we could get a gap fill for this 123 area. I think it's going to be very sideways, trying to push up to about 121, just continue to chop around. It's been shopping for almost a week, so there's not much else going on with it. Same thing with Amazon, very, very choppy and sideways. We might see this thing just continue to be stuck in this range between 132 and about 128. That's all I'm seeing from it. It's just so sideways for the last like 2 weeks. Not much is going on with Amazon. For Meta, if it breaks below 290, that's going to be a bearish signal. It could come all the way down to like 287.5, all the way down to about 280. If it breaks and holds above 290, we could push for 295, but then potentially 300. I think it's going to pop and retest 295, then reject off that and come right back down to 292. And eventually, I think it's going to sink down to get a retest of this like imbalance down here at around this like 287 area. And I have a target of 287 for Meta. I think it's going to come down after getting a pop. So a pop then drop just like SPY. That's what I'm seeing for it. All right, guys, so that's my short-term projection for the markets. Thank you all so much for listening. Don't forget to watch these levels very carefully on Tesla. Remain calm, cool, and collected, and do what you have to do. The market could be tricky, so be prepared with all these different Fed speakers coming out for tomorrow. Tesla may pop in the morning, thanks to how it typically does, thanks to how it's been doing for the last couple of days, then drop as time goes on, trade sideways, and get a very flat close, maybe a somewhat green close. But over the next couple of trading days, there is a risk of Tesla cooling off because of the current trend as it's making lower highs. There's a risk that Tesla's going to come all the way down to retest 270 over the next couple of days, by the way. It's going to come even lower than that if it breaks below that. If it breaks 270, there's going to be more downside coming. The odds do favor that looking at the current trend at the time I am recording this. But always be open-minded in case there's any other piece of news. Now, if you're bullish on Tesla, you want to see this thing hold above 280. So far, it does not look like that's likely going to happen unless we get a really bullish piece of news. We need a catalyst. So far, even off the Mercedes news, Tesla did not hold up. So it's looking weaker as of right now. All right, so thank you all for listening. Have an absolutely spectacular rest of the day. Remain calm, cool, and collected, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Tesla to the moon, as the long term is still incredibly bright, and peace out.